Greetings, viewers. Eric the Car Guy here, back again with another live show where I answer your questions and sometimes butcher your names. I take the questions from the Google Plus live events that I post on the day of these events. However, this information may be irrelevant, and some of you have already cued into the fact that I have said that this will be my last hangout on Google Plus. So it's not that I won't be doing these anymore. It's that Google Plus is shutting down Hangouts as of mid-September. So I'm not going to be able to do it via this venue anymore. I've already looked into doing this on YouTube Live, which is what I'm going to do. However, I have to figure out the whole question and answer kind of side of that. The Hangouts have been really friendly to that sort of thing. As far as setting up the technical side of stuff over on YouTube, I've already figured that out. That's not difficult. I just need to figure out how to get those questions from you. But this would be the last one on Google Plus, just because, like I said, mid-September, they're going away anyway. I usually do these shows every other week, so I will be into September. So I could technically do one more of these. So if I'm not able to sort out the question side of things, there may be one more hangout on Google Plus, but that for sure would be the last one because Google Plus is shutting that down. Anyway, so here's what I do. Automotive questions, I take those. I also have been doing AMAs, which have sort of broken things up and made it a little more interesting. So there's sort of an AMA thing going on, but I try to answer as many questions as possible during the course of this. Now, I will also say that I often refer to perhaps other videos and links to things. Give me a minute after the show completes because I need to go back in and add those links to the description of the video, but I intend to do that. If you're posting your questions on YouTube, I can't see those questions. I won't be taking any questions off of YouTube during this show, once again, because I can't see them, but also after the show concludes, I won't be taking any questions there. You can always go to EricTheCarGuy.com. There'll be a link in the description for that. I have a lot of resources there that I've put together to help you with automotive issues if you have them. There's a forum, there's an FAQ page which answers the majority of questions that I get asked that you can go to and look at right now. So if I don't get to your question, we're not without options. Anywho, oh, if you hadn't noticed, we're in a different part of the shop today. I thought I'd try something new. So we're at this angle. You may see the RL on the lift back there. Just bought that today. Don't get too excited. It's already sold to a friend of mine. I bought it for him. I have some work to do on it before he gets it. I'm shooting videos with it. The Acura RL is very similar to the Acura Legend. So in other words, the stuff that I'm doing on this car pretty much apply from like 91 to 2004. So it does reach a lot of people that are driving those type of Acuras. Where's Oliver? Right there. So just all tucked away in the corner, all happy. Needed to move. I needed the space on the lift for me to do what I had to do. So I won't move you around and make you seasick anymore. And as I said, please forgive me ahead of time because sometimes I do butcher your names. The show, I say, starts at a half hour, but I try to answer a lot of questions and I always seem to run over. And this is, once again, kind of moot. I say post your questions early because I start at the bottom and work my way up. About halfway through the show or so, I start randomly picking questions. Once again, that's all useless now because I have no idea how it's going to shape up when I switch over YouTube, but I will still be doing these and I still will work to answer your questions. Steve Grandstaff, Torx head bolts, helpful or PETA? I say PETA. PETA being short for stuff I'm not going to say here. Living in a place that things get rusty, I don't like them. I'm in the PETA category. So yeah, I'm not fond of them. It's, you know, those and Allen head fasteners, both of those kind of annoy me because if there's any dirt or junk down inside the fastener, or if the tool you're using doesn't quite fit properly, the wrong application of torque is going to mean that that fastener is going to be useless by the time you're done with it. So, you know, whatever. And Germans tend to love using those things, and GM tends to like Torx bits, safety Torx bits as well. Good for them. James Barnett, got a question, maybe you can help. 99 Dodge 1500 3.9 liter truck ran fine, but if you listen through the air intake, you can hear a hollow thump. Does not change with the increase of idle, as I asked Paul, aka Scanner Danner, but he didn't know either. Well, I don't know. Listening to the intake for thumping noises, I don't hear the noise. I don't know if it's normal. I don't know something you should be hearing. I don't know. Without hearing the noise, I don't know. But there will be a link in the description to a FAQ article that I wrote about finding noises that might help you identify where it's coming from and if it's an issue. If you don't have check engine lights, you don't have performance issues, things like that, it may be normal, because it's not often I do a diagnosis by sticking my ear down by the intake. I just don't. So what you may be hearing may be perfectly normal. Jason Gyrie, I remembered. Jason's been back a couple of times and he's phonetically spelled his name so that I can pronounce it properly. Hi, Eric, you saved me $500. Yes, it's one of my favorite things. Oh, wait, I didn't save him $500. You have $500. This is a hypothetical. I screwed up. It happens. You have $500. Do you buy tools and diagnostic equipment or car parts, such as a Power Probe 4, trolley jack, special tools to make life easier down the road versus new shocks, springs, wishbone assemblies, or whatever, knowing your car will love you for it? Stay awesome. I could spend $500 on either of those things quickly. As far as priorities, it just depends on what I need. I mean, if I need the tool, I buy the tool. If I need the parts, I buy the parts. As far as priorities depend on what's right in front of me, what I'm doing. So I hope that answers the question. Matt Frankick, that's weird. Have you considered setting up Fixing It Forward as a nonprofit so donations could be tax deductible? You need to read my newsletters. My newsletters come out the last day of the month, and I post them forever and always over on my website, go figure, on the blog page. So the latest ones are there, and I do updates on Fixing It Forward, the Fairmont project, everything else going on with ETCG. So if you want to know all that stuff that's going on, look for my newsletter or read the past blogs. In those past blogs, in fact, just last month, I talked about that I am in the process of turning Fixing It Forward into a nonprofit. It's going to take a few months to do so for the application process, but it's already in process. And there's further details at that blog page that I mentioned. Benjamin Platt has a 1997 Silverado with a 5.7. I've been having problems with hard starting. I've cleaned the injectors, replaced the plugs and wires, checked the battery voltage and parasitic draw. I've even replaced the fuel pump, and I'm still having the same problem. Sometimes it will start right up, and other times it takes 2 to 3 minutes for it to fire. I've noticed it takes a while for it to build pressure when it's cranking. I'm not sure if that means the oil pump is worn out or not. Any advice would be awesome. Love your videos and can't wait till the Fairmont is done. Stay dirty. I can't wait either. I've been working on that a while. Okay, so on to your problem. I'm guessing you're concerned about oil pressure. And I've said in the past that oil pressure is not so much dependent upon the pump, but the clearances between all the bearings in the bottom end of the engine. That dictates more about oil pressure than anything else. The only thing the oil pump does is create a volume of oil. The resistance to that volume of oil coming out of the oil pump is your oil pressure. Therefore, if the clearances between all the little bearings and things inside the bottom of your engine get excessive, that oil leaks out rather quickly. Therefore, you have a drop in oil pressure. A lot of people hope and pray that they have an oil pump problem when they have oil pressure issues. In my experience, it's a worn out engine. If I'm not mistaken, some General Motors vehicles, and I'm not a General Motors expert, I will just come out and say this, but I do believe somewhere there is some connection between the oil pressure and, I don't know if it's a fuel pump circuit. I almost think it's a fuel pump circuit, whether or not it operates. So if the engine does not see oil pressure, or if the computer does not see oil pressure, it therefore disables either the ignition or the fuel, I don't know which one, and doesn't allow it to start. If that's the case with your vehicle, and once again, I do not know for sure, you need the service manual to find this out. Or perhaps a good search on the internet. But if that's the case, then you need to check your actual oil pressure. So in other words, remove the electronic gauge, hook up a manual gauge, a mechanical gauge, hook that up, check the oil pressure and see what you have. If the oil pressure is low and below spec, it could be that worn out engine that I spoke about. Now, before you go saying, hey, let's just throw some thicker oil in there. What happens when you do that, especially when it gets cold outside, is that oil takes a long time to get to the top of the engine, and in essence can actually accelerate engine wear. So it's like robbing Peter to pay Paul. You put in thicker weight oil so that it slowed down the noise, gave you the oil pressure back, whatever, but it's a temporary fix. And okay, so know it's a temporary fix going in, but know that it is not a fix. But as far as long cranking times, you have to find out what you're missing. You have to find out if it's spark, if it's fuel. So check the spark, check the fuel pressure, while you're cranking the engine and see if you have either one of those things. So if you don't have either one of those things, it could be the computer interfering because it doesn't see oil pressure. It could be some other issue that's causing that. That's why I say service manual is helpful. But you find out what's missing first, and then check the oil pressure, and then maybe start looking for an engine. They're not hard to find. Those engines are quite prevalent. But I hope it doesn't come to that, because, you know, I hate giving people that kind of news. But like I said, the truth is, oil pressure is rarely caused by a bad oil pump. It's most likely caused by a worn out engine. Victor Automotive has a 2000 Chrysler LHS with a 3.5 liter engine having a misfire at idle, really noticeable on load. Replaced plugs and a couple of coils, unplugged each injector while it was running, and all of them seem to be doing their job. That's called a power balance test for those of you playing at home. Scan data doesn't show misfires. Now leaning towards either a injector not firing, gas into a cylinder, or vacuum leak. Let me know what you think it might be. Last thing, I would wonder if compression is bad in a cylinder. Going uphill, it's really bad. Also hooked up a Noid light where the coil would go, and all seem to be running the same. Thanks, Eric. First of all, Noid lights are not for ignition coils. Noid lights are to check the operation of the fuel injectors if they are firing. So maybe there's some sort of miscommunication there or something like that. But you traditionally use a Noid light to see if an injector is getting a signal. So if you don't have an injector that's firing, you check to see if it's getting a signal. If you see that it's getting a signal with a Noid light, you know that the problem is likely the injector, and all the wiring and everything going up to the injector is good. As far as coil packs, you know, ignition coils, I'm going to say right now, and I've talked to people that engineer ignition coils about this. Resistance checks on ignition coils are absolutely useless. Unless you have a hard failure, unless like it's a really hard, an easy thing to see. So maybe for a quick check, yes, but don't trust it. And the reason is because there's just not enough current in that ohm meter to run through that system to find out if there's a break. You're talking about really tiny wires, and they need a significant amount of current passing through them in order to detect a problem. So in other words, it could read good and the coil could be bad. You're having a misfire under load. That says to me ignition. It's usually what I find if it's under load. So if you're accelerating hard and you're having a misfire, then many times I find that to be an ignition issue. So I would, you know, check your spark on all of the coils. But you did a power balance test and you said everything was good there. Probably not a bad idea to check compression, because so often with a performance issue, people overlook mechanical. And it could be that you've got a cylinder that's low on compression, or you've got a valve that's not sealing, something that's causing that cylinder not to be able to contribute like the rest. Once again, should have showed up on the power balance. That's what's confusing about your statements here, is because you say basically your power balance was good, but yet you have a misfire and you really don't have anything that lends itself towards that. So yeah, I'm kind of scratching my head on this one, and I'm going to defer you to the performance section and the FAQ on my website and see if that can possibly help guide you the rest of the way, because I'm not so sure. Eric Leiden. Hey, Eric, thanks for the great show. Do you have any kind of hi-fi system in the shop? I understand that music really doesn't work while you're shooting videos, but I myself hate working in silence. Finest greetings from Sweden. Hello, Sweden. Okay, funny you should ask, and I happen to be sitting in the right place. Yes, I do, and I wouldn't exactly call it a hi-fi system. I've had it a long time. It's quite probably older than the majority of my viewers, but here it is. It's right there. It's an old Sears radio. The reason I like it is because when I got it, it had a input in the back, an RCA input, so you could plug a CD player into that. Also, it has divorced speakers, so I'm able to hook up whatever speakers I want. I have these up here on the shelf. I have that one and also that one. So those are both hooked up. But the reason why the CD thing is important is because I can plug this into my iPhone and play my iTunes through there, or whatever I want. So yes, I do, and there it is. And it's a very simple old system. Works just fine in here, and it's seldom that I'm here and not shooting, but it is nice to just turn on some music and tune out. But honestly, I don't mind the silence. Once I'm working, I'm just focused on what I'm doing, and to me, that's okay. So yeah, this is where the AMA part gets fun. Sir, I've seen you here before. Sharivan Ranu. In your strut replacement video, you mentioned about lining up the upper strut mount hole with the hole at the bottom of the strut itself. Is it a problem if they are slightly misaligned? Thanks for helping. Not quite sure what you're getting at with that, because in my strut video, what I talked about is trying to position the spring in the same position on the upper spring mount. There's usually a witness mark. There's usually some kind of rubber that the spring fits into, and you can see where the spring used to sit, and I try to get it back in that same spot, because if it's in a different spot, it could actually raise the height of the vehicle a little bit. Unless you're replacing those bushings, then so what, where it ends up. As far as the bottom part where the spring sort of hooks in to part of the strut, so the strut is designed in such a way to where the spring will sit inside a spring seat. And I like to try to line those up if possible. I mean, if it's way off, it's a problem. It's a little bit off, it's probably not gonna be a problem at all. But I think that's what we're talking about. Yes, questions about why this is the last event, and I already answered that. Jesse Silva, what movies are you looking forward to see this year or next? Honestly, I don't know. I don't follow that like I used to, and I don't go to the movies really anymore. I just wait for stuff to come out. I usually get it on iTunes. I cut the cord a couple of years ago. I'm very happy about that. So I buy all my entertainment. I buy my TV shows, that type of thing, or Netflix. So I have very little knowledge about what's no exposure to commercials to tell me what's coming out and when for me to get excited about it, and I don't miss it. So I couldn't say. I really couldn't say. I will say this. I don't want another Batman versus Superman movie or anything from the DC universe, it seems, because it's just it's total crap fest. However, Marvel's kicking butt, man. Come on. Avengers? Are you kidding me? Awesome. Eric Hagan. Greetings, Eric. Update. I finally fixed the engine performance issue I had on my Audi A4 a while back, unless you remember. The engine used to misfire at low RPM at operating temperature. What I did was clean the MAF sensor, replaced all the spark plugs and fuel filter. I also checked the air tube that you mentioned, and it was fine, except there was a clamp missing at the throttle body, so I just put the correct size one on it, and now it runs happily again. Yay, I love follow-ups, so thank you for that. That was a simple and cheap tune-up that made a significant difference. The fact that we should never neglect the basics when dealing with engine performance issues is so true. Cheers. Absolutely, could not agree with you more. And I probably said that in my answer to you and the initial question that you had. So yeah, I often go for the rule of KISS, keep it simple, stupid. So often people have overcomplicated a problem before they even open up a hood. There's all these convoluted things that are going through their heads saying, you know, oh, this is bad, this is bad, this is not going to work. And it turns out to be something as simple as spark plugs and cleaning a MAF sensor. And you get amazing results. So yeah. Simple stuff. Go for the simple stuff first. Brian Burke, on newer Hondas have this ECON button that does some of the cylinders at cruising speed to increase gas mileage. Are the same cylinders deactivated each time? If so, is there any worry of the cylinders in general wearing unevenly since some are getting much less use? Interesting question. And I believe I have this on my 2012 Odyssey, and I recently did a trip on our family vacation of about 1,000 miles round trip. And I could feel the system going in and out, and it was a little annoying, but I was able to figure out how to work it. So like going up hills and how to get the gas just right and how to keep it in that mode on the highway. And honestly, it got amazing gas mileage. I was very impressed. I think I averaged somewhere around 25 miles to the gallon. And it was partly highway, partly driving around up and down hills, all that kind of thing. And for a fully loaded, and I mean fully loaded van, like me, my wife, 2 kids, and fully loaded, getting 25 miles to the gallon, I thought was pretty impressive. So I was very happy about that. But as far as the cylinders, there was some kind of TSB or something about, I think on the Odyssey vans in particular, where they were being affected adversely because of the system. I've also heard people from my Odyssey video that I put out when I first got it, that there's a way to disable that system if you want. There's some aftermarket, something that you can get that can basically make it so the computer never puts it into that mode if you really wanted to. So far, I haven't noticed any adverse effects. And once again, I got really good gas mileage driving that thing. So there's that. Moving on. Casey Krieger. Has a 2002 Chrysler 300M. He was going down the highway and it started shaking and it just died out. It wouldn't start up, so I got it towed home. Next day it started right up, but now it has a ticking sound really bad and the oil light flickers. It still wants to die out. I took it to Midas and they think it's a bent valve. What is your opinion? Thanks for any help. Okay, I think you left something out. And I think what you left out is the fact that your temperature gauge was pegged, or maybe there was a light on that said you were overheating. Because everything you describe is almost textbook, you fried your engine, is what it sounds like. So if you ran your engine until it wouldn't run anymore, you couldn't get it started up again, you let it cool down and you started it up and now it's got a noise and a flickering oil light, that says to me you killed your engine. You can verify this by checking the oil pressure is what I would do. I mean, I don't know if, and I hate to make blanket statements like this, but Midas is like brake suspension, things like that. They aren't necessarily known for engine diagnostics. I used to manage a CarX, so I know who works there. I know what comes through the door. I know, and part of the problem is people are bargain shopping for repairs to begin with. But this is a long, protracted discussion that I don't necessarily want to get into here. I want to get to other people's questions. Bottom line is, check the oil pressure, and if your oil pressure is showing significantly low, then like I said earlier, it usually means the engine's fried. So if you've got a ticking noise and a flickering oil light, that pretty much means you're probably going to need an engine. Corey Wood has a 2004 Silverado 1500 4.8 liter two-wheel drive. Every once in a while it would blow a cloud of smoke when started and then stop almost immediately, and it won't do it again for another week. One thing I've noticed is disappearing coolant, but it's not on the ground anywhere or in the engine bay. Any thoughts? First of all, it depends on what color the smoke is. If it's just a puff of white smoke when you start it up every once in a while, it's perfectly normal. So it may be nothing. If the smoke is blue, it could mean that the valve seals are going bad. Could mean. It's hard to say, really. But it really depends on the color of smoke. And as far as the losing coolant, it's perfectly normal. Like much of your coolant in most vehicles is water. 50% of it, in fact. Water will evaporate when it heats up. So as the engine heats up, it sends coolant to the overflow. When it's in the overflow, it's still hot. If the water is almost boiling, it turns to steam and goes away. So your coolant will go low over time normally. I usually top it off every oil change is when I check it, just to see what it looks like in the overflow. But yeah, so that could be perfectly normal. All of it could be perfectly normal. Carmine Galatieri. Eric, I have a 2004 Volvo XC90. I'm thinking of upgrading lights to LEDs. What is your opinion on the LED headlights? Are they reliable? Do they even make a difference? Thanks in advance. P.S. Don't worry about messing up my last name. Most people do. Thank you for that. All right. The Acura Vigor sitting behind me has LED headlights in it. I love them. However, I've done videos about LED headlights and HID headlights. And actually, I have one sort of in the queue. I'm waiting for it to the later part of the year where it gets dark sooner. And I plan to do a comparison between halogen, HID, and LED lights and how they adversely affect oncoming traffic. Because one of the things that I found out when I posted my first video about HID headlights, which I thought would be really cool, didn't realize there was so much controversy out there. Got a lot of hate for that video. In fact, I think one person commented saying that I was blinding single mothers while driving down the road so they would spin out into the ditch and kill their babies. Yeah, really. People can be pretty hurtful in the comments if they want to be. That being said, you need to check your local laws to see if you're even able to do this, because some states won't allow you to even alter the lighting in any way. Some countries don't allow you to alter the lighting in any way. So I'm not exactly sure where you're from. So you may not be able to legally do what you're attempting to do. I would look into that before you do anything. But as far as if I personally had a choice between LEDs and HIDs, I prefer LEDs. I mean, HIDs are great. The intensity and everything that comes out is awesome. They take a bit to warm up, and there's a lot more stuff involved with many of the HID systems. You need to have a step-up transformer in order to get the proper voltage to get them to even work. Some LEDs are that way too, and cooling's a problem with the LEDs. So Cree LEDs, I like those. That's what I've got in my Acura here, and I've got a video about it, so I'll link those in the description, and you can check those out for yourself. Also, if you do it responsibly. Make sure that when you're done doing the installation, Those are trucks. They like to park right outside. When you're doing the installation, make sure that you aim the headlights when you're done. Make sure that they're properly aimed so that you're not blinding oncoming traffic. So if you are legally able to do it, make sure that you go the extra step and think about the other drivers on the road, because you don't want to blind them. And for the most part, you should be okay, but just follow those steps. Jeffrey Stath. Why do cars idle high on cold start? Wouldn't it be better to have the car idle low and gradually come up to curb idle, because there would be less lubrication on that fire up? Yeah, sort of. An engine is very inefficient when it's cold. There's operating temperature for a reason. They do everything possible, especially on modern vehicles, to get the engine up to operating temperature ASAP. Because when that happens, it runs at its most efficient. So high idle is part of that. Because it's cold, it's not going to burn fuel as well. So you need more fuel and you need more air to go with it in order to keep it running. Not doing so means that it may not run like it's supposed to. In fact, it would probably run pretty rough and pretty crappy until it warmed up. My guess is you're not old enough to have driven a car with a carburetor and one that had a choke that wasn't functioning properly. Same kind of thing. So that choke is there to allow more fuel to go into the engine and raise the idle so that it gets up to operating temperature quickly, so we can get all normal and happy. So that they do that on purpose, and it's because the engine is not efficient on startup. Trevor Freimeyer has a 1997 Dodge Ram 1500 5-point landing truck that has a head gasket job started on it a couple of years ago. The guy who started the job pulled one head off and then just let the truck sit. I'm trying to get it running again and wanted to know your suggestion for the rust that has formed on the cylinder walls. It's going to be a work truck, so it doesn't have to run perfect. I didn't want to pull the engine and get the cylinders bore. Open to any suggestions. Thanks. That's a tricky one. So it looks like you bought a vehicle from somebody who started a job and didn't finish. And those 5.9 liters, well, okay. Thinking about this, what would I do? I wouldn't want to use anything too abrasive, and I wouldn't necessarily want to go straight for the cylinder home. I think what I want to do is something that would break up the rust. I might start with like transmission fluid and acetone, which is an awesome penetrating oil, which if an engine was seized or sat for a long period of time, I would fill the cylinders with acetone and automatic transmission fluid. It's really great homemade penetrating oil kind of thing. But this is, yeah, you know what? In fact, I've got something right here. I'll get like a Scotch-Brite pad and sort of scrub along the inside of the cylinder. It really depends on how severe the rust is. If it's just like surface rust, this would work great. If there's pitting, now I've recently run into this with the engine I pulled out of the Mustang. That thing had this exact problem, and I think they just fired it up. They obviously did nothing to the inside of the cylinders. There's a bunch of pitting in there. I'll link the engine removal video that I did, or teardown video that I did, where I found this problem. And I do believe it was the result of something similar. Water got down inside the cylinder and just sat. But I mean, there were deep pits in the cylinder walls with this. A little bit of surface rust, a little bit of flash rust. Like I say, maybe take a little bit of transmission fluid or maybe a good penetrating oil, something like that, and one of those Scotch pads, and see if you can scrub that rust out of the cylinder. That might get you where you need to go, so long as you're not damaging the rings when you first start it up. So a lot of deep rust will do that, but after the thing runs for a little bit, those rings will pretty much scrape off any additional rust and machine themselves into place. Now, how well it'll seal after that, I was very impressed with how well the Mustang ran, considering I had massive pitting inside my cylinder wall. So if you're just using it as a work truck, I agree. You don't need to pull it out and bore everything out. Just do what you can to try to clean it up. Try any of those methods. Hopefully they work for you. Let's see. Jeffrey's back with an 85 Bronco, 351 Windsor with a 600 CFM Holly. So you do know what a carbureted vehicle is like. The choke can only be open 40%. Any higher, the engine will hesitate and stall. Big vacuum leak? Likely, because when the choke is closed, you're limiting the amount of air that's going into the engine. But if it's coming in from somewhere else, it can cause something like that. So yeah. But you know what? I say rebuild that carburetor. Do it. Rebuilding carburetors to me is just fun. And a Holley, especially one like that on that car, it's like one of the basic carburetors that you rebuild. I mean, that will translate into a lot of other carburetors. So yeah, I'd say rebuild it, see what you got. Also look for the vacuum leaks around the intake gasket. And in fact, your vacuum leak could be at the throttle shaft, because after a while, that twisting back and forth, that can get worn out. And I do have a video on how to find vacuum leaks. I spray around with carburetor cleaner. Some people don't like that. You can also use water. They don't like it because it can be flammable, which can get exciting. But you can also use water, and that will close it off. Also, propane is another popular one. You just hook up like a vacuum hose to the propane, and as the idle raises around a certain area, you found a vacuum leak that way. Another method is smoke. You can fill the entire intake with smoke and look for places where the smoke is coming out. So there's methods, there's ways of doing that. But yeah, look for some vacuum leaks. That's probably a good place to start. Joshua Campbell recently became a first-time Honda owner twice. My wife loves her Odyssey, and I drive a hybrid Civic. The Odyssey wants 5W20, and the Civic wants 0W20. Would it be a big deal if I just got a bunch of one type and ran that for both? Vehicles will both be garage kept, so I'm not terribly worried about wintry cold starts. Also, would you recommend for a bidirectional scan tool for Hondas? I'm going to give you this look, because I've done an extensive video where I sat down with people at Engineer Oil and posed this very question to them. And the engineers, the people that make the oil, say put in what the manufacturer recommends. Period. Period. No exceptions, no whatever, no, just the engineers came up with a number of an oil viscosity for that engine. And they went through a lot of time and effort to come up with that number. Don't ignore it. Don't ever ignore it. Always put in what the vehicle calls for, period. As far as a scan tool, sky's the limit on those. I mean, just depends on how far you want to go. If you just want something to, pull codes, you can get one of those like OBD adapter things that you can use your smartphone with. Like a Blue Driver has one, and there's another one, Open Bay. No, not Open Bay. There's a few of those out there. There's just so many scan tools out there. Scanner Danner might be a better person to ask that question too, but it boils down to capability. Some, just pull codes. Some will give you live data. Some will give you ABS codes. Some will give you more codes. So each and every capability of a scan tool goes up with price. So a scan tool that's, and just the basic ones today come with a lot of capability, enough to get you into trouble. And honestly, at the end of the day, if you don't know what you're looking at, spending a lot of money on a scan tool is not going to make you a better technician. Actually, the thing to do if you want to get better at being a technician is read Scanner Danner's book about engine performance diagnosis. That's how you do it. Scan tool is not going to help you, because if you don't know what you're looking at, you're kind of lost anyway. So that's a very open question. However, I have done a video with Scanner Danner about scan tools that may be helpful to you, that I will once again try and link in the description for you. Where are we as far as time-wise? We're about halfway through. Repetio Riviera. That's a really cool name that I wish I could say better. Hey, Eric, is it safe to remove the hood liner for good? I mean, does it help reduce the heat off the engine bay since the hood liner is some kind of insulator, or is it just a sound dampener? Mostly they're sound dampeners. I don't know what type of vehicle you're dealing with, but you probably should be able to remove it. I think you'd be fine. I mean, if you really had to. I mean, if it's like stringy and hanging down and you're working on the car and it's like on the back of your neck and you're all sweaty, it sucks. I get it. But, if it's just there and not bothering anything, why bother? So it's your choice. It's your vehicle, but I don't think it's going to hurt anything if you take it out. Roy DIY. Is there a better brand of engine oil that you start with? Sample Shell, semi-synthetic 10W40, or can you try maybe one or two other brands at the next oil change to know what brand works best, but the same viscosity and type of oil, i.e. semi-synthetic? Example, Castro semi-synthetic 10W40. Thanks. That's an excellent question, actually, and one that I also covered in that same video about engine oils that I sat down with the engineers. It's everything you always wanted to know about oil, but were afraid to ask. Those of you that know Woody Allen films might find humor in that. What they told me, and this is where I have to sort of separate out them walking the party line of the company that they worked for, or if it's an actual fact. But they have done testing on these types of things. What they said to me was mixing different brands of oil can be somewhat detrimental because of the different additive packages. When they make an oil, they start with a base oil and then they add a bunch of stuff to it to make it into what it is. Different companies use different additive packages, as it's called. There could be things that adversely affect one another switching brands. Could be. That's what they said. And that's where I'm struggling, because, okay, they work for Valvoline, but you know, it's really difficult to say whether it's going to be a problem. Personally, you know, the takeaway from all of it was, if you've got an engine with more than 60,000 miles, run high mileage oil, which is a synthetic oil. And as far as synthetic oils in general, they're a derivative of crude oils, base oils, with the exception of Shell's Platinum Plus, which is taken from natural gas. So they manufacture their base oil. But even in synthetics, quote unquote, full synthetics, even the way they're advertised, they got in trouble for this a while back. It's still dinosaur oil to start with. And it's the additive package that makes it synthetic. Now, am I saying synthetics are bad? No, I love synthetics. I'm running synthetics in all of my vehicles. I mean, they're engineered better, so to speak. But they all start with like a crude base oil. And for the most part, they all start with a crude base oil. So, you know, the whole synthetic versus regular oil kind of thing depends on how much money you want to spend. So, but as long as you're changing your oil on a regular basis and your filter, I think that's the best thing you can do for your vehicle. And what you use in that instance, I ran cheap oil for years, never had a problem with any of my vehicles. Now I care more, got a little more in the bank account, so I spend money on synthetic high mileage stuff in the Vigor. I don't have problems. I did the same thing with the GSR back there that apparently had an oil burning problem, but I wonder if it actually did. I think she went and took it someplace for an oil change, and then they didn't put oil in it, and she drove it for a while until the oil light came on. I think that's what happened, because she calls me up and apparently it was 3 quarts low one day, and I forgot to ask whether it was soon after an oil change. But I've been watching it, and it does burn a little oil, but not a significant amount. That being said, I run high mileage synthetic in that Integra. I run it in the Vigor. Actually, the Fairmont's getting racing oil. That was the machine shop that made that recommendation. They built the engine, once again, the engineer. Go by what he says. So we'll just take it from there. But mixing brands, that's an excellent question that I can't quite answer. I mean, I don't think it's a problem, but if you ask an engineer, somebody who makes the oil, they'll say maybe, maybe not. It's probably the answer that you'll get. Juan Pablo, longtime viewer, first time asker here. So my question is about Honda radio codes commonly found in newer model Hondas. Why do they have those? Is it really to deter thieves from using the radio? It just seems like such a small detail to add to a security system too, especially since these radios only fit in their respective cars. I am truly grateful for all of your content over the years. You have saved me thousands, and I can't thank you enough. I've also owned a DC2 Integra in the past, and I'm very excited to see videos on this car. Stay dirty. You know, I'll let you know now. I'm going to, after Friday's video, take a little break from the Fairmont series and do some other videos, and some of those videos are on the Integra I've shot. Some of the common problems, my Integra had a lot of the common problems, the latch in the back, the power antenna, that was another one. Also, I showed how to take the front bumper off, and that maybe, you know, those license plate bracket things in the front, those can sometimes be an issue. What else did I shoot? Oh, the header replacement. I did that. Also, the hood cable. I've shot videos on all of those things. Not sure. I'm not saying that whole block of videos is going to come out before we get back to the Fairmont, because after this Friday's video, we're into like the engine building part of the Fairmont, which is an awesome series, and I'm looking forward to that. But I think it's time to take like a little break in between. How much of a break? I'm not sure if it's going to be 1-2 weeks. Haven't decided yet. Back to your question about Honda radio codes. Yes, it was an anti-theft measure that they took, but consider that, you know, when somebody steals a car, they don't steal it for the car necessarily. They steal it for the parts, because the car is worth 100 times more in parts than it is as a complete car. So in other words, if somebody stole a radio and they wanted to sell that radio to somebody with a similar car to you, they'd still make a profit, but they'd need that radio code to do that. They're not that difficult to get. So it is a good point that you raised. Does it need to be there or not? I can't say. I mean, they've been doing it since my Acura Vigor has it. So they've had it since the early 90s as far as those radio codes go. So it doesn't have to be newer. It goes all the way back to 93 in the case of the Acura here, 91, I think, even. So it's hard for me to answer that question, whether or not it's necessary and whether or not it can't be bypassed. But you're right. I mean, they only fit in that vehicle, but you know, they don't just make one of those vehicles. There's quite a few of them out there. Umer Sohail. Just purchased a 2010 Honda Odyssey with 72,000 miles on it. I'm planning to drive from Delaware to Niagara Falls in 3 days. It's a cannonball run. I've been told that the van needs tires and an alignment. I'm wondering if you know a good highway tire. I want it to last a while since I drive this vehicle at least 300 miles daily on the highway, going at speeds of at least 70 miles per hour. I'm also concerned about the coolant and transmission fluid. It's just fine. I was told by the previous owner that they change it every 15,000 miles. How often should it be changed? Should I have it changed before I leave? Should I change the coolant? I'm planning to change the oil, but I'm not sure if I should put synthetic or conventional in the engine. I was told that the timing belt and water pump were replaced. Should I replace any other belts and fluids before I leave? Should I have the alignment done when I put the new tires on tomorrow? Sorry if this is a long one, and any help is greatly appreciated. Thanks, Eric. Keep the videos coming. Okay. I'm going to recommend what I put on mine. My 2012 Odyssey, I put the Michelins on it. They're Premier ASs or something like that. Go to TireRack.com, put in your vehicle information, look for the Michelins that are there, the all-season Michelins that are there, and those are the ones that I used. And they're excellent. I got great gas mileage that rides down the road great. Traction is great, both wet and dry. Haven't driven them in the winter yet, but I actually have a set of winter tires that I put on mine, and so that's not important to me. But I love the Michelins as far as the tire goes. Anytime you install new tires, an alignment is an excellent choice. So if you were recommended tires and alignment, that's the direction I would go. So definitely have those two things done at the same time. As far as the transmission fluid, being changed every 15,000 miles is completely unnecessary. I believe the interval is every 30,000 miles. However, I insist that you only use Honda automatic transmission fluid in that transmission, period. There's no discussion. There's no anything. Use Honda automatic transmission in a Honda automatic transmission. I'll say it once more. Use Honda automatic transmission fluid in Honda transmissions, period. And you won't have problems. Change it every 30,000 miles. I have a video about changing Honda transmission fluid. It's not difficult. There's no filter to change. It's internal inside the case. You're not able to change it. So you're only able to take out it's about 3 quarts, 2.7 be precise, I think, that you take out, and you put that same amount back in of what? Honda transmission fluid, and you should be fine. As far as the coolant goes, I don't mess with the coolant, especially if they just changed the timing belt water pump. They had to change the coolant, and especially if it's got blue coolant in it. The newer Honda coolant is low sulfate variety. It's blue. I've seen very few problems with radiators leaking. Previously with the green coolant, I did see a lot of radiators leaking, but since they switched over to the blue and phosphates, it's almost non-existent now that I see those problems. In fact, my Element has the newer coolant in it, and it has a 20-some-year-old, well, not 20-year-old, it's 2004. So it's never had a radiator changed or anything like that, and I've never had any issues with it, which is kind of weird for a Honda. But the blue coolant does seem to make that difference. So as far as the coolant, I'd leave that alone. As far as the transmission fluid, since it was changed so often, I would also leave that alone. But when you do change it at 30,000 mile intervals, strongly recommend that, well, I don't recommend, I insist that you use the Honda fluid and put Michelin tires on it. You'll be happy. You will thank me. They're about $600, but money well spent, especially if you're driving that many miles. You'll get your money's worth out of it, believe me. All right, we're at that part of the show where I'm going to get all random on it and only answer a couple more questions because we're about 45 minutes in. Wow, a lot of people have been posting questions during this show. This just caught my eye right off the bat. Alberto Alvierdo, what is the worst customer you've had? That's hard to say. I had one customer back at the dealership who weaseled his way in and got me to do some side work for him. Then after I did the side work for him, everything was fine, but for some weird reason, he went back and told my manager that I was doing side work, basically in an effort to try and get me fired. That guy was the first guy that came to my mind. He was just a total jerk. You know, I was trying to help him out, but he was just like, hey, can I take this knife and stick it in your back and twist it a little bit? But there have been plenty. I've had lots of customers over the years, and not all of them are good. And some of them were downright excellent. Some of the customers I've had are freaking awesome, and they've been around for years. And I've got that GSR as a result of that. I took care of that car for 15 years. She was a great customer the whole time, and that's so well looked after. I mean, body-wise, it was a little beat up, but as far as mechanically, car is perfect. Especially now that I did all that work I talked about. Yowie Betancourt. Can you explain the difference between red antifreeze, Toyota super long life, versus green super long life versus Dexcool antifreeze, and how would it affect the cooling system if the wrong kind is applied? We just sort of touched on this, the difference between the green and the blue stuff with Hondas. A lot of companies came up with their own formulas. As far as Dexcool, that's got a really bad reputation. After it's been sitting in a system for a while, it turns to this yucky goo. This gel kind of, ugh. Not a fan of Dexcool if I'm awesome. If I'm honest. Not a fan of Dexcool if I'm honest. Toyota Long Life is good stuff. I use it. Whenever I see that stuff in a system, I use it. And the rule of thumb is this. If you see that it's a Toyota and it has a Toyota red in it, put Toyota red in it. You know, I skip the whole universal coolant thing. I'm not saying the universal coolant thing won't work, because honestly, I don't know. But I know that if you put the same stuff in that you took out, you're not going to have a problem. Because whenever you drain a cooling system, there's still a bunch there somewhere. So if you replace the radiator, there's still a bunch of coolant in the block. If you replace the engine, there's still a bunch in the radiator. Or in the heater core. You know, there's still some hiding in different places. And I do know that mixing different types of coolants is a no-no. So if you do decide to switch over to some other coolant, start fresh, start clean, and go that way. Otherwise, yeah. Okay, I'll just do a couple more. Michael Lambert. I know Brian the cameraman will be seeing more of him in the future videos, possibly, maybe where you can answer his own questions about automotive field vehicles in a video. Interesting. In fact, just yesterday we shot a video talking about when we went and did the engine series. Yeah, because there's been a lot of positive response to having Brian in front of the camera as well as behind the camera. So yeah, Brian and I are friends. We were friends before we started working together like this. So since we've been working together, we've become closer friends. I'll put it that way. Let's see. All right, one more short one. Well, that's weird. Paul Kim. Hey, Eric. I fixed a couple of electrical connections in my car with a paperclip and electrical tape, speaker wiring, and AC lower pressure switch connector, since Honda only wanted to sell me the whole harness. Anything I should be worried about? Shorts. Shorts meaning shorts to ground or shorts to power, that type of thing. Go to the salvage yard and cut off the connectors that you need and solder them in. That's what I would do. I mean, you don't need to buy the whole harness. In fact, I have old harnesses that I had from engine swaps, things like that. They were all cut up anyway. I keep them around and I grab a connector off them now and again when I need them. So take a trip to the salvage yard. And with that, I'm going to close this one out. I'm kind of tired. It's been a long, kind of sweaty day and I'm just kind of over it. As said, future Q&As are set to go on YouTube Live and not on Google Plus anymore, because once again, Google Plus is going away. So this very well may be my last Google Plus live show. And it's because of those reasons, not because I'm not going to be answering your questions anymore. So please be advised of that. Also, give me a little bit of time to get that stuff in the description. I'm going to have to sort of remember the questions that were asked and try to remember all the things to put there, but I will try to put tons of information there that would be helpful to you if I did not get to your question, which I'm going to apologize for that if I wasn't able to get to your question today. If you do have questions, there's EricTheCarGuy.com, as I mentioned. Try the FAQ page. And if you want to know the latest and greatest of what's happening in the Eric the Car Guy universe, the blog page. Like I said, I go through a lot of trouble to write a monthly newsletter, put a whole bunch of stuff into it. You'll know everything that's happening, everything that's coming, everything. You'll know it all. Check it out. Aside from that, yes, there is Google Plus, obviously, Facebook and Twitter if you wish to connect with me socially. And I close each of my videos, including these live events, so be safe, have fun, stay dirty. But most of all, I want to thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Thanks for all that you do for me. and I hope I'm able to give back at least a little bit. Anyway, I will see you next time. So thanks again.